The iPhone 13 Pro Max is the most powerful smartphone on the planet, with its A15 Bionic chip performing those heavy-duty tasks faster than all of its competition. But today, the iPhone is going up against something different in this $4,000 gaming PC. Now, you may be thinking, why are we doing this comparison? And, well, why not? Taking a look at the spec sheets, the iPhone is powered by a 6-core CPU and a 5-core GPU on the A15 Bionic chip, while this gaming PC is powered by a 16-core Ryzen 5950X CPU and NVIDIA's RTX 3080 Ti GPU, which the graphics card on this thing alone is about 2 iPhones long and almost 5 iPhones thick. Now, obviously, this isn't a fair comparison. These are two completely different devices with different thermals and different requirements for power efficiency, but I think it'll be interesting to see how these two stack up in as close to a real-world test as we can get it. Let's find out. This episode is sponsored by ShipStation. So ShipStation is the #1 software for online sellers. Whether you're selling products on your own website or you're selling stuff on eBay, Amazon, or Etsy, ShipStation funnels all of your orders into one simple interface that you can manage on your smartphone. It doesn't matter if you're just starting out shipping only a few packages a week, or if your business is booming with thousands of orders, ShipStation saves you time by making it easy to print out your labels and automate things like sending out email updates to your customers. And icing on the cake is ShipStation can help you save money, with it not only allowing you to compare rates from carriers like UPS and FedEx, but you also get access to the deeply discounted shipping rates that normally are only reserved for the Fortune 500 companies. Look, running a business is already hard enough, but with ShipStation, you can focus less on the logistics of shipping stuff out and more on the stuff that actually matters. Ship more in less time. Just go to shipstation.com/PhoneBuff to get a 60-day free trial. That's 2 months free of no-hassle, stress-free shipping. That's shipstation.com/PhoneBuff. Make ship happen. Alright, so we have 5 different tests lined up in video editing, photo editing, some number crunching, web browsing, and then finally in gaming. We'll start off with the video editing test, an area where the iPhone typically dominates other smartphones, but unlike in our speed tests, the project we're working on here is much more intensive. It's 8 minutes long, the clips on the timeline have scaling effects and color grading, and it's not just one video layer the entire time, but there are portions where there are 3 or even 4 simultaneous 4K streams going at once. So a heavy workload to the point where the iPhone takes almost 10 minutes to complete, finishing the video export in 9 minutes and 45 seconds. Now, that's not a bad result given how intensive that timeline was, but on the PC, it was no contest, with the PC just ripping through the task, finishing it in just 3 minutes and 45 seconds. So a full 6 minutes faster than on the iPhone. Obviously, we expected the PC to outperform here, but having a real-world result with the PC being roughly 2.6 times faster, it's interesting. Moving on to another Adobe app in Lightroom, we're gonna be editing and exporting the same set of photos. So for the first task here, we're applying the same color grade to all 100 photos, 50 of which are RAW photos and the other 50 being JPEGs, where the iPhone only takes 48 seconds to apply all of the effects. Whereas on the PC, somewhat surprisingly, it took a little bit longer, with the PC taking 1 minute and 1 second. So the iPhone was actually 13 seconds or 27% faster at that batch color grade. But we'll see how things go in the batch export, where exporting all 100 of the edited photos pushes the iPhone hard, with it getting hot and dimming the screen just over halfway through, resulting in it taking 14 minutes and 7 seconds to finish. Whereas on the PC, well, it redeemed itself here, with it doing the same batch export in only 4 minutes and 39 seconds. So while the iPhone was 13 seconds faster in applying the effects in the first task, the PC just crushed it in the export, with it being almost 10 minutes faster. Next up is Excel, where we created this monster of a sheet designed to push the CPUs as hard as Excel can. We're talking trillions of operations calculated as soon as the document is opened, to the point where it took the iPhone 3 minutes and 14 seconds to finish loading the thing. On the PC, on the other hand, it took 12 seconds. So a whopping 16 times faster to open this dock on the PC. But there is a catch here. This result isn't due to just the extra horsepower on the PC, because it turns out that the iPhone version of Excel isn't optimized to support multi-core processors. Meaning, instead of using all of the 6 cores on the CPU on the A15 Bionic, it's only using a single core to do all of the operations, whereas on the PC, it was using all 16 cores on that Ryzen 5950X, which basically explains why it was 16 times faster. Now, on Windows, there is an option to disable multi-threading in Excel, and when we ran the test back on the PC with just a single core, the result was much more in line with what we got on the iPhone, with it actually taking a little bit longer to complete on the PC, loading the document in 3 minutes and 41 seconds. But obviously, why would you disable multi-threading if you didn't have to, right? And even if the iPhone did support multi-threading, we did some calculations based off of the single core results that we got here, and the PC's 3 minutes and 41 seconds divided by 16 cores comes out to roughly 13 seconds, which is pretty close to the 12-second actual time that we got, while the iPhone's 3 minutes and 14 seconds divided by its 6 cores nets a roughly 32-second time. So at least when it comes to number crunching like this, more cores equals faster. That's the beauty of parallel processing and why you typically want higher core counts on your workstations. But moving on, the next test is web browsing, where we created this custom script to cycle through the same set of websites and measure how long it took to load them all. We cleared the browsing history on each device and ran 3 trials and took the best result from each, where the iPhone's best run was 38 seconds compared to the PC's best run of 31 seconds. So a clear win for the PC here, but I wouldn't put too much weight into this result since there were a lot of variables that we couldn't control for. But since we went through the trouble of creating the custom script and running the test, I figured we'd include it here just for your reference. But it's time to move on to the graphics performance or gaming test, and unfortunately, I've got some bad news. As hard as we tried, we just couldn't find a game that was both cross-platform and that pushed the GPUs hard enough to net a real difference. And even the games that were capable of running at up to 120 Hz on the iPhone, they didn't really seem to push the A15's GPU hard enough where it would drop frames, which kind of makes sense, right? Like, why would a developer enable a higher refresh rate if they knew that the best iPhone on the planet couldn't run it smoothly? So maybe if we ran this test in 2 or 3 years down the line with games designed for the iPhone 16 or whatever Apple ends up calling it, this iPhone 13 could be pushed to its limits. But for now, as much as I don't like to run benchmarks since they aren't really real world tests, it's the best option that we have here. This 3D Mark Wildlife Extreme benchmark renders graphics at a 4K resolution, and the stress test in particular loops through the same set of scenes 20 times, where in the iPhone's first loop, it scored 3,187, while in this specific gas station scene, it was getting around 23 frames per second. Now, while that's not ideal for gaming, obviously, it's still pretty impressive considering how hard the benchmark was pushing this thing. But when compared to the PC, in its first loop, it was night and day, with the PC scoring a whopping 40,914 while getting an insane 295 frames per second. But where things get even more interesting is near the end of the stress test, because like I said earlier, these devices have very different thermals. The PC has multiple fans and a radiator to help cool it down, while the iPhone doesn't really have any active cooling, meaning by the 20th loop, this is about 20 minutes in, the iPhone really started to bog down, with its score dropping from 3187 down to 2220, getting only 15 frames per second this time. The PC, on the other hand, it was still going at almost 100%, scoring 40,350 while getting around 293 frames per second. So only a 1.4% performance drop on the PC after 20 minutes, while on the iPhone, it saw a massive 31% drop, meaning on average, the PC was 15 times faster in this benchmark. Now, obviously, this isn't news to anyone. We expected the PC to crush it, but this whole thing was out of my sheer curiosity to see how big the difference actually was, and well, now we know.